Greg Hanley wrote a little blog and called it Today's ABA. And the reason I included this in the presentation is because I think this really speaks to his methodology about compassionate ABA. And I think sometimes we get a bad rap as behavior analysts that all we do is escape extinction, or all we do is punishment or shock therapy or whatever. And that's really not the case. Like we really want to create joy. We want to create love of learning. We want to create or improve a quality of life. So he just talks about that a little bit. And these are some of the key points that he talks about. So we want our learners and ourselves to learn by listening. So we want to be a very client-centered focus. So it's the PFA and this SBT is very client-driven. So for example, there's an open door policy, where in a traditional FA, if at any time a learner tries to leave the instructional area, you don't count that trial, or that session. In this particular methodology, you follow the learner. So it's an open door policy, because if they're trying to leave the environment, even if it's in the test or the control, it means that we haven't found they're happy, relaxed, engaged. We haven't found their life is good condition. And I love that, because you're really listening to the client, and you're not putting confines of a room. Because I probably wouldn't be able to find my HRE in this room. Learning by creating joy. So like I said in the beginning of the presentation, we are lucky that we have a science to get people to like us. Like teachers are sometimes, and parents are sometimes amazed, like, how did you get him to do that? Or why is he going towards you? Or this is amazing. And I think that's very powerful. And it's because we create joy. The Machiavellian approach is not going to work here. Like the process is important. The end doesn't always justify the mean. So yes, there is escape extinction, and yes, there are prompting procedures and physical prompting, but that might not always be the best process to get to the treatment outcome or the outcomes that we desire. Learn by empowering. So allow the learner to vote with their feet, as Greg Hanley says. Like follow them. See where they're going. Listen to what they're saying. Teach them to dissent. Teach them to say no. Teach them a functional communicative response. Teach them how to advocate for themselves. Like that's really important. Use choice. Greg Hanley and a lot of other clinicians talk about enhanced choice model and using choice. It's a very undervalued strategy, but it's powerful when we give them choices. And then learn while we're teaching. So we can learn a lot while we're teaching from the process. That's why we videotape things. We analyze ourselves. We see what we're doing wrong. I love doing functional analyses with people. It's really not fun by yourself. And you can kind of piggyback off each other and see what you're doing wrong. And most of the great research articles that you're reading about functional analyses, how many people must have been in that clinic? Like 3, 4, 5? We learn through teaching. And we listen, we learn, we guide, and we coach. So we're more than just behavior analysts. We're more than just clinicians. We're also mentors, we're supervisors. Even as RBTs, we're mentoring, we're coaching. We have a very powerful job, and we're in a great field. That leads me to why do we do the practical functional assessment and the skill-based treatment? Why not just do trial-based functional analysis or an analog functional analysis or traditional functional analysis, the brief, the classroom-based functional analysis? Why do this as opposed to those? And I think Greg Hanley defends his practice in the sense that he would do anything for a piece of New England coffee cake. That's what he says. That is his the most powerful reinforcer. However, if you teased out the individual ingredients of a coffee cake, he wouldn't work for flour, he wouldn't work for a packet of sugar, he wouldn't work for cinnamon, but all of those things synthesized is what's going to maintain his behavior. So that is the premise of the synthesized reinforcement. It's socially mediated, it's natural in nature, and it's not contrived. Also, why do the PFA? Finding the function is not always clear. It's usually quite hairy. I think there was a study I read, and it was in Java, that I think 85% of functional analyses have a multi-operant function. That means only, not that great in math, that means only what, 15% are a clear-cut function. So a lot of the times they're synthesized in the literature anyway. So he says, why tease them out unnaturally when learners are probably just trying to access reinforcement altogether? And I think of myself when I watch movies. I cannot watch a movie with nothing. Like, I need popcorn, I need or some type of snack. I also really like to text during movies. Like, I need a lot of different reinforcement. It's not just one thing. So to me, it makes sense. And then you have the skill-based treatment, which utilizes shaping. And I love shaping, and I don't think I use shaping enough in my practice. I tend to overly use prompting. But when I think about it, Skinner didn't prompt a rat, right? He didn't prompt a pigeon. He used shaping. Like, if you are into like animals and stuff like that, try to prompt Shamu when you're training. Like, it's not going to happen. So I think shaping is really great because you don't have to prompt. You don't run the risk of prompt dependency. You don't have to lay hands on anybody. It's using the principles of reinforcement and reinforcing successive approximations until you get the learner to the terminal response. Finding the function is not important for Greg Hanley. It's whether we can turn the behavior on and off. So he always warns when you're writing up a report to never say the hypothesized function is, because you're not finding a function. You're just trying to exercise experimental control to see if you can turn the behavior on and off predictably. That's all it is. And there is some controversy to that. I know Wayne Fisher has attacked it pretty heavily, saying that it doesn't elicit the same treatment outcomes as a function-based treatment. But then there's rebuttals to that it does, if you look at the treatment side of it. So there are pros and cons, but to me, it just makes sense for my personal practice. So I really like this quote from Murray Sidman. Everybody knows how to punish. Only behavior analysts are explicitly trained to use positive reinforcement. The real challenge is not to devise coercive measures for treating emergencies, but to prevent those emergencies from happening. So colloquially, we always talk about punishment, and I always find myself as a parent being like, if you do that one more time, you're gonna go to timeout. Like, what am I doing? Like, that's not, why am I trying to treat my son differently than I would treat my clients? So I think we're very quick to go to punishment as people, but as behavior analysts, we know that positive reinforcement is like 9 to 10 times more powerful.